Today, class is on technician time management, looking at shop productivity, and also looking at technician efficiency. We'll be discussing both Tech Connect, Service Connect, and the new Auto Apps dashboard. So you'll see here next to the technician, you'll see a D for dashboard in the red. And when you click on that, that brings up the Auto Apps dashboard. We'll let you see your technicians when they punched in the morning. So you can see he came in at 2:32. You can see he started working on this job, this Mercedes, doing the oil service tier 2 at 9:27. One thing you'll see is it'll start flashing at you when that time that they punched in that job goes over their billed hours on that job. And then if you have a technician that's on E-time, it lets you see when the E-time was, when he punched in the E-time, and that he's actually working on the building or equipment at that time. So what we wanted to create with the new dashboard is being able to look at time clock, look at finished jobs, closed jobs, and then all the reports. So when I get into that, I'll be talking about the different reports. We'll be looking at on the time management pieces and looking at the actual time clock. So when a technician comes in for the day, he's going to time in through Tech Connect. And then from there, he's going to actually time into a job. So we're actually tracking the amount of vehicle hours against the amount of build hours or the time that you associated with that job. So you can look at technician efficiency. So with each technician, we talked about managing priority hours. So we know the technician knows based on priority that he needs to work on this vehicle first, second, third, and fourth. You can see expected delivery times when the service center can be engaged in using vehicle tag for multiple things, and also vehicle delivery notes. So again, important to update priority per vehicle and workflow. So once a technician is clocked into a job and then he's engaged into marking jobs finished, so he may be finished with doing a tier 2 oil change, and then when he marks the job finished, you can actually mark other jobs finished too. So let's say he were to finish this oil change, I would simply mark that job finished. And then he's also finished with adding that drain plug, and now he's going to start working on the drive belts. It's important to clock into the vehicle, not necessarily clock into each job. So again, able to see build hours and pending hours left for the vehicle, also being able to see that he's waiting on both those belts. As soon as they're received through the invoice number, they will go green, so the technician knows that those parts have arrived. What we're looking at with, that was Tech Connect, what we're looking at with Service Connect is being able to look at and see which jobs each of the technicians are clocked into, so it visually lets you see that. You're able to filter out by technician the actual work. You can see he has 17.5 hours. We know he can't deliver that in a day, or he may be finished with a 3-hour job, almost finished with a 3-hour job, which will increase the finish time and also decrease the pending hours. So when we look at the dashboard, we simply click on D for dashboard, and that brings up what we can do with each of the technicians. You'll notice with John, if I wanted to clock in, you can see he's finished with 2 of the 4 jobs. He's now working on 1.7-hour job. And if I click on his technician name, you can see when he clocked in the morning, he clocked in at 8:02. He started working on the vehicle at 8:04. He moved to marking it in history, marking it finished, and then he moved to his next job. So you're able through the time clock to see how much actual time he was at the shop, how much vehicle time is. So if we looked at a previous day, you'd be able to see that he was at the he was at the facility 7.56 hours. He was working on vehicles. We call it vehicle time, 6.81 hours. He was on E-time, 1.76, so he was 90% productive yesterday. So the measurement we're trying to find out with shop productivity is how much vehicle time he had compared to E-time, meaning that he wasn't clocked into a vehicle. You can see right here, show all available idle time. If I clicked on that, these would be the time punches between where he didn't punch in or he punched out of a vehicle and then he punched out for the day. So you can see that he had 20 minutes that he was either cleaning the shop or working on idle time for the E-time. You can also see finished jobs. So if I click on finished jobs for that day, it's simply going to show you every job that he marked finished. So he had 11 hours of finished work on that finished job, which is going to be different than actual time. He had 5.96 hours. You can see the build time here. We can see the actual time, and we can see how efficient he was on each job. Now, he's going to be super efficient on some jobs, but as we look overall, he was overall very efficient that day at 197%. Closed jobs, if I looked at closed invoices, we're probably going to see that he only had one closed invoice for that day, yet he finished that the day before. So that wouldn't be on a finished job report for today on the 12th, because he actually finished that job on the 11th. So on the finished job close date report, he had 5.2, again looking at efficiency. So Ken, the time clock lets us see based on the technician punching in for the day, then punching in on the jobs, and then also punching in on E-time. And you'll find that when the service advisors are fully engaged in marking the jobs priority, marking workflow, that the technicians really like being able to see the work that they've done for that day. So if I simply went for reports and wanted to look at finished jobs for that day, anything I marked finished that day would show up on his finished job. So he's marked 1.9. You can see the date it closed, the date it got marked finished, and then the ones that haven't been closed, you can see the finished date on that. So technicians can see when their productivity based on work they've done. They also can see week to date, and we can see this week, and he can look at it being Wednesday that he's finished 25.6 hours. He's 170% productive. So when we look at these reports, you can see that he can punch, not necessarily he's punching in on every job, but when we look at the subtotal of the invoices, we can see the efficiency of the total vehicle and the vehicle time based on the vehicle reports. So when we look at the new time management and how easy we've made it for the technician to punch in and punch out on jobs, and you're able to now to start looking at your overall shop productivity versus your technician efficiency. So in this case, with this shop, we're going to go in and we're going to look at last week. And if we look at last week, what we're going to find out is, if I just click on the time clock summary report, that we're going to see that each technician, their actual time at work was 40, 42, 35 hours. We can look at, of the time they were at the facility, the service facility, they were on vehicles 27 hours, 31 hours, so you can see the total vehicle time. We then can look at E-time, which we call expense time, and we can see that overall the shop was 70% productive. So this is where you can make the biggest gains in your business, is by actually knowing how productive your shop is. Most shop productivity is not in the hands of the technician. It's the hands of the service advisor and the team that supports the service advisor. So when we start asking the questions is, why are we only 70%? Why are we only 75% productive? We can dial into the data. And by having good information, we can look at each guy, and we can say, hey, I want to look at my E-time for daily for each one of those technicians. And when I look at that, I can see his actual time per day, his vehicle time per day, his E-time per day, and then how productive he was. Now you can see on the 4th that he had a lot of supervisor time, so he's working with other technicians for 2 hours. So you're able to manage and say, hey, why is a guy, once you've engaged in the expense time or E-time management, you're able to see cleaning the shop, working on the building. By adding notes to that time, you're able to see exactly what got done in the detail of those reports. And if I want to see the detail, and this is why the time clock detail it now works for both technicians and also all employees that you'd like to see a time clock in the shop. So if I go and look at the time clock detail for Aaron, this technician, I can see when he punched in, I can see when he was cleaning the shop, I can see his full flow of the day, and I'm able to look at his total actual time, vehicle time, E-time, and shop productivity. So when we're looking at each one of your technicians, and even if you were looking at one of your employees, you could print the time clock detail report. We've made it extremely easy, and I'll show you that, how to update and make sure your time clock reports are correct. You'll notice that we have technician closed invoice reports and technician finished jobs reports. In this case, where this shop has a lot of hours per vehicle, if I was to look at the closed invoice summary, we're gonna see some of the technicians didn't produce as many hours because they may not have had invoices actually closed during that time frame. When we look at jobs marked finished, so when a job's marked finished, it updates the finish date for that job. You're able to see a much more accurate of what's really going on with your shop based on your finished time versus the vehicle time against that finished time, and you're able to see efficiency by technician, and you're able to see the overall efficiency of your service center for your technicians. So technician efficiency is going to be looking at how much vehicle time it took based on the time you allotted to have that job done. So if we were to look at John, who's the most efficient guy in this service center, we could pick John. And from John, we could say, I want to look at his finished jobs detail report for that week. So simply clicking on that detail report, you're able to see each job, his vehicle time against each job, and then how efficient he was overall. And then again, you can see it based on overall, which is because he's not necessarily going to punch in to every vehicle or every job, but overall, we're going to be able to see his efficiency for those vehicles. The report that we just added is what we call the KPI reports, the Key Profit Indicator reports. And it's most important to look at these Key Profit Indicator reports. And when we look at that, we're now going to be able to see actual time, the time the technician was actually at the shop versus vehicle time versus E-time. We talked about those reports, and they were 70% productive. And then now we're able to look at finished jobs. And you can see his vehicle time was 28 against those 42 hours, and he was 149% efficient versus the vehicle time that against actual time. So you actually have two different types of vehicle time, one against the hours he actually worked at the shop, and then the vehicle time against the jobs that got marked finished. So this very easily lets you look at both shop productivity and both technician efficiency. And then as we're looking at shop productivity and technician efficiency, we're able to look at it by day. And the way we designed this report is if I wanted to look at John, and I wanted to, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and look at Aaron, and I go to the time clock, and I want to start the time clock on the 4th because of the first day. I'm able to see his actual time, his vehicle time, and his E-time. Then you can go down and see that he's cleaning shop. He had supervisor time of, over an hour and 40 minutes, and then we had 15 minutes of more supervisor time. So you're able to see exactly what happened by day. you're able to go to the next day. So it becomes important for you to be able to start, if you really want to dial this in, especially the first weeks you start using this, is to be looking at your technician's actual time clock, and be looking at finished jobs and closed jobs per day. And that's the way we designed this feature, is that now I can look at what got finished that day. So I'm able to see how many hours got finished based on that day, how much vehicle time he had against that build time. So again, the build time versus the actual time gives us the efficiency. So the efficiency for that day can be much different than the closed invoices, and he only had, again, one closed invoices for that day. So again, the time clock makes it very, very easy for us to look at all the time. And then if you want to see the time show all available idle time, you'll also have idle time where they simply weren't timed into either the vehicle or the e-time. So we're going to automatically track that idle time as what we call non-clocked idle time. So when we're looking at the reports, let's say we wanted to, in this case, look at John for that day, you're going to see that he had a lot more of the idle time as far as where he didn't clock into a job or didn't clock into a vehicle. And you can see it becomes, the question mark becomes, what happened to that 4 hours? And as we look at our most productive technicians, what we're going to find out very quickly in our shops is your technicians actually have more time to work on vehicles than the service advisors realize. And what you can do by dialing in the time management system and dialing in priority and workflow, you're going to find out, especially in a busy shop, that you're able to increase technician shop productivity. And if you can think about increasing productivity by 10 points or 10%, and then increasing efficiency by 10%, you basically can add a technician to your service center without even hiring another technician. And that's the way we've designed the reports, you being able to look at these reports at a glance, being able to look at your e-time management, looking at each day, how much vehicle time they have, how much e-time, why, and the question mark becomes, where was that idle time in managing that e-time where they were either waiting for parts, waiting for instruction. It can be all sorts of reasons that our technicians are not working on cars. We now have a tool now to look at our service center, measure our service center, and it becomes very, very important, again, to what we're trying to do with our system is be able to manage and measure both technician shop productivity and technician efficiency with the reports based on through the time management systems of looking at. And so it becomes easy. So you're able to instantly look at the time management tool, see what your technicians are punched into. If they're not punched in, just start managing that punched in time, and then embracing both managing hours rather than sales dollars, and managing labor hours produced for each day for each technician, and having the service advisors fully engaged in managing each one, not only their technicians but also their jobs. So this is managing with the new dashboard, with the new reports, and all the time clock management. We've also added the ability in setup for you to add and manage employees, so you can actually add your non-technicians to the time clock if you wanted to use your time clock for your non-employees, and it allows you to also go in and market and manage to your employees, so you can see even on your time in, and we've made it really, really easy for you just to double click, and let's say that employee really came in at 7:30, you can just change that time to 7:30. If they forgot to punch out for lunch, you simply can add he punched out for lunch at 11:30, and you're able to add those times, and those times just fall into the report. So you're able to very easily edit and add time in, time out, lunch, and then back in, so your reports become very accurate for the day, for the week, for the month. So this is managing your technicians and looking at shop productivity for looking at your shop productivity and your technician efficiency.